My aunt denied me 4 days off to bury my father. 4 days. For the man who raised me alone, who worked double shifts so I could eat. She looked at me across her polished desk and said, "We're short-staffed." That night, I stopped being her niece. I became her reckoning. Stick with me. My name is Brielle Carson. For 6 years, I worked as the operations coordinator at Hale and Rowe Financial. The company belongs to my aunt, Monica Hale. On paper, I had a good job. In reality, I was loyal, underpaid, and always available. If someone called in sick, I stayed late. If a report was missing, I fixed it. I believed hard work would mean something, because we were family. Then my father, Daniel Carson, died from a sudden heart attack. He was all I had. He raised me alone after my mom passed. He never missed a school meeting. He never forgot my birthday. He worked double shifts so I could go to college. And now he was gone. The morning after he died, I went into Monica's office and asked for 4 days off. Just 4. I needed to plan the funeral. I needed to breathe. She didn't even soften her voice. She said quarter-end reports were more important. She said the company couldn't function without me. Then she added that I was being too emotional, and that business always comes first. Later that day, I overheard her approving a 2-week vacation for her daughter, Tessa. No questions asked. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I wasn't family there. I was cheap labor with a familiar last name. That night, I sat alone in my apartment and remembered something my father once told me. Never beg where you're not valued. I opened my laptop and logged into the company systems. Not to steal. Not to destroy anything. Just to look. As operations coordinator, I handled vendor contracts, payroll access, and compliance logs. I knew where everything was buried. I understood how everything worked. For the first time, I saw clearly how much control I actually had. I didn't do anything reckless. Not yet, but I made one quiet promise to myself. I would never let Monica humiliate me again. And when the day came, I would be ready. The next morning, without permission, I attended my father's funeral. I stood by my father's grave alone. The sky was gray, and the air felt heavy. I kept expecting to see my Aunt Monica's car pull into the parking lot. She never came. Not even a message. Not even flowers. Old family friends showed up instead. Men who used to sit at our kitchen table. Women who brought food when my mother passed away. They hugged me and said my father was a good man. A hardworking man. A loyal brother. While we stood near the grave, I heard whispers. Not cruel ones. Just quiet conversations. Monica built such a big company, someone said. She's very successful now, another added. I nodded politely, but something about their tone felt strange. After the burial, one of my father's oldest friends, Mr. Alvarez, pulled me aside. He looked uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure if he should speak. "You know your dad helped Monica start that business, right?" he asked gently. I blinked. "Helped how?" "He invested money when she had nothing," he said. "Your father believed in her. Gave her most of his savings. She promised to repay him once things grew." My chest tightened. She repaid him? Mr. Alvarez hesitated. "Not that I know of." The world suddenly felt very quiet. My father worked double shifts for years. We struggled. And he had invested his savings into Monica's company? The same company where she just denied me 4 days to bury him? I drove home with questions running through my mind. Pieces started to connect in ways I didn't like. 2 days later, I returned to work. There was a written warning waiting on my desk. Unauthorized absence. No condolences. No sympathy. During the team meeting, Monica called me out in front of everyone. She said professionalism matters. She said personal issues should not interfere with business responsibilities. Her eyes were cold. Tessa avoided looking at me. I felt every pair of eyes in the room. For a moment, I wanted to quit. I wanted to walk out and never return. But then I remembered what Mr. Alvarez told me. I remembered my father's sacrifices. I remembered the way Monica spoke to me. My grief slowly changed shape. It was still painful. But now it was sharp. Clear. If my father helped build that company, then something wasn't right. I went back to my desk, sat down, and opened my computer. I wasn't leaving. I was staying. That night, after everyone left the office, I stayed behind. I told myself I was just checking old records. Just curiosity. But deep down, I knew I was searching for something. As operations coordinator, I had access to archived financial files. Old contracts. Original filings. Amendments that most people never looked at twice. I I started with the earliest records of Hale and Rowe Financial. The company wasn't always big. In the beginning, it was just paperwork and hope. I opened the first official partnership agreement. My hands froze. The document clearly listed two co-founders, Monica Hale and Daniel Carson. My father. His name was right there in black ink. Equal ownership. Equal authority. Equal investment. My heart started racing. I kept digging. A few years later, there were amended filings. Updated ownership structures. Revised partnership terms. But something was wrong. In those later documents, my father's name was gone. Removed. As if he had never been part of it. I went back to the original agreement and compared it with the amended one. The signature page looked strange. The formatting didn't match. The ink tone looked slightly different in the scanned copy. It felt altered. Not updated. Altered. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. This wasn't a simple business disagreement. This looked like document tampering. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't react. I quietly downloaded copies of the early filings and saved them to a secure drive. Then I thought of someone I trusted. A year ago, during an external audit, I worked closely with a compliance attorney named Gavin Mercer. He was sharp, calm, and serious about rules. He once told me that financial paper trails always tell the truth. I found his business card in my drawer. I sent him a short email asking if we could speak confidentially about a legal concern. I didn't explain everything, just enough to get his attention. He agreed to meet the next evening. When I showed him the documents, he studied them carefully. He compared dates, signatures, and filing numbers. His expression changed from neutral to focused. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. "This isn't just shady," he said quietly. "It's illegal." My throat tightened. "You're sure? If these documents were altered to remove your father's ownership without proper transfer or compensation, that's fraud." Fraud. The word echoed in my mind. I walked out of that meeting feeling different. The anger was no longer emotional. It was precise. My father didn't just help build that company. He may have been cut out of his own business. After my meeting with Gavin, I stopped seeing the company the same way. Every report looked different. Every number felt like a clue. I started digging deeper into vendor payments. As operations coordinator, I had access to contract histories and payment approvals. I told myself I was just reviewing processes. No one questioned it. That was my job, after all. But the more I looked, the clearer the pattern became. Several contractors were owned by distant relatives of Monica. Their contracts were much higher than market rates. Invoices were approved quickly, without proper review. Some services were vague, with little proof they were ever completed. I checked payment timelines. Family-linked vendors were paid early. Others waited weeks. Then I looked at Tessa's records. She was listed as an external marketing consultant. Her monthly fees were absurd, more than experienced agencies charged. Yet there were no detailed reports attached. No clear campaigns. Just large payments approved by Monica herself. My stomach tightened again. This wasn't just about my father anymore. This was a system. Next, I reviewed HR files. Complaints from employees were marked resolved. But there were no notes explaining how. One former manager had filed a grievance about unfair dismissal. The file ended suddenly with no follow-up. It looked buried. I started documenting everything carefully. Dates. Amounts. Approval chains. I saved copies the right way, without raising system alerts. I kept notes at home, not on company devices. When I updated Gavin, his voice was serious. "If you go after her," he said, "you can't hesitate. Once this moves, it won't stop." I understood. This wasn't personal revenge anymore. It was legal exposure. So I began cleaning up my digital footprint. I separated work tasks from my private research. I avoided using keywords that might trigger internal flags. I reduced unnecessary emails. I kept my face calm and my voice steady at meetings. Monica started watching me. She asked if I was feeling better after my emotional episode. I smiled politely. I said I was fine. I spoke less. Observed more. One afternoon, she stopped by my desk and looked down at me. "Remember who gave you this job?" she said quietly. I looked up at her and nodded. But inside, I was thinking something else. Maybe she forgot who helped build it. The pressure started slowly, then all at once. Monica began assigning me projects that normally required 3 people. Full compliance reviews. Vendor audits. Payroll reconciliation. All with impossible deadlines. When I asked for clarification, she said, I thought you were capable. In team meetings, she started pointing out small mistakes. A formatting issue. A missing attachment. Things no one ever cared about before. Her tone was sharp, like she wanted everyone to see I was slipping. Tessa made it worse. She laughed when Monica corrected me. She made comments like, maybe operations is too stressful for some people. Once she asked if I needed grief counseling in front of the entire team. A few people looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke. I felt eyes on me every day. So I changed tactics. One afternoon, when Monica criticized my workload again, I let my voice shake. I let my hands tremble slightly. I apologized more than necessary. I even stepped out of a meeting early, pretending I was overwhelmed. Word spread quickly. Monica began acting satisfied. She believed I was cracking. Tessa whispered to co-workers that I probably wouldn't last another month. That was exactly what I needed. While they focused on my breakdown, I stayed quiet and organized. From my personal email at home, I forwarded carefully selected documents to an external auditor who had previously reviewed Hale and Rowe Financial. I did not include commentary. Just files. Vendor overpayments. Altered partnership agreements. HR inconsistencies. Anonymous. At the same time, Gavin began building a legal timeline. We organized events by date. My father's original investment. The amended filings. The suspicious payments. Each piece connected to the next. Then I overheard something that changed everything. Monica was negotiating to sell the company. Millions of dollars. The buyers were in final discussions, pending due diligence. That meant outside auditors would soon examine every detail of the company's records. My pulse quickened. If the sale closed before the truth came out, everything would become harder. Ownership would shift. Evidence could disappear under new management. But if the truth surfaced during due diligence, the entire deal could collapse. For the first time, I saw the full picture. This wasn't just about exposure. It was about timing. I went home that night and looked at the calendar. Audit reviews were scheduled to begin within weeks. Monica believed I was weak. Tessa believed I was finished. But I understood something they didn't. Timing is everything. The sale date was finally set. The office felt different that week. Everyone was excited. Monica walked around with a bright smile, talking about new opportunities and next-level growth. Tessa bragged about moving to a bigger office after the acquisition. No one knew what was coming. Then due diligence began. A team of external auditors arrived and started reviewing compliance records, financial statements, and corporate filings. They requested full access to archives. It was standard procedure before any major purchase. I stayed calm. When they needed operational files, I provided them. When they asked about vendor histories, I sent organized folders. I answered questions clearly, without adding emotion. I did my job exactly as written in my role. But I could feel the shift. 2 days into the review, I noticed Monica's office door closing more often. Her voice sounded tense during calls. She stopped smiling as much. Then the first crack appeared. An auditor asked about early partnership filings from the company's founding years. Specifically, changes in ownership structure during the second year of operation. Monica's tone changed when she called me in. They're digging into old paperwork, she said. Probably just routine. Pull whatever they need and keep it simple. Later that afternoon, I received an official email from the audit team. They requested clarification regarding early partnership documents and amendments. They asked if original signed copies were available for review. My heart beat steadily, not fast. This was the moment. Before responding, I walked into Monica's office. She was pacing. Just send them the amended versions, she said quickly. No need to confuse them with outdated drafts. Handle it. Handle it. I nodded politely and returned to my desk. Then I opened the archived files. Not the edited amendments. The originals. The first signed agreement listing both Monica Hale and Daniel Carson as equal co-founders. I attached the original documents to the auditor's email. No commentary. No accusation. Just the truth. Within minutes, I saw internal system notifications. Files accessed. Documents flagged for deeper review. An hour later, Monica stepped out of her office again. This time, her face was pale. She was on the phone, speaking in a low, urgent voice. She glanced at me across the room. For the first time, she looked unsure. And in that silence, I knew something had shifted. Something was slipping out of her control. The next morning, the office was tense. Whispers moved quickly from cubicle to cubicle. The auditors had found something big. Forged signatures on the early partnership documents. My father's name had been removed illegally. Within hours, the board was alerted. Emails flew between directors. The buyer froze the acquisition. No new contracts. No meetings. Everything on hold. Even Monica's confident smile seemed smaller, forced. HR opened an immediate investigation. They requested statements from employees, files, and approvals. Everyone was suddenly aware that something serious was happening. Monica tried to maintain control, but the walls were closing in. Later that day, Monica came to my desk. She asked me to step into her office. I followed quietly, calm on the outside. The door closed behind me. "Brielle," she said, her voice low but sharp. "What have you been doing with the auditors? Are you trying to ruin me?" I took a deep breath. "I've been truthful, Monica. I know about my father's investment. I know the money he gave you, and I know how his name was removed from the company records." Her eyes narrowed. "Do you have proof?" she demanded, stepping closer. "You have no idea what you're risking. If you cross me, you'll regret it." I stayed calm. I didn't flinch. I reached into my bag and quietly pressed record on my phone. Every word, every threat, every cornered panic she showed would be captured. Monica's face changed as if she realized I had anticipated this. Her threats faltered. "Fine," she snapped. "I'll suspend you. Effective immediately." She left the office quickly, slamming the door behind her. I exhaled slowly. The suspension didn't feel like punishment. It felt like confirmation. She had underestimated me. She thought fear or authority could control me. She was wrong. By the afternoon, the board called an emergency meeting. Directors were gathering. Emails from auditors continued to flag discrepancies. HR reports were being compiled. The buyer's representatives were asking for answers. I returned to my desk, silent. I watched Monica pace outside her office. Her confidence was gone. She no longer held the room. The truth was now in motion, and no threat or suspension could stop it. For the first time in years, I felt in control. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice, for my father, for myself, and for the company he helped build. The next morning, the board called Monica into the conference room. I wasn't there, but I heard the tense voices from the hall. Directors were questioning every decision she had made over the years. Evidence from the auditors and HR reports were laid out clearly: vendor overpayments, inflated contracts, forged signatures. Monica tried to explain, but the company's legal counsel was firm. Liability was undeniable. Every signature, every altered document, every unpaid debt my father had left behind was now documented and traceable. The fraud investigation was officially opened. By mid-afternoon, news reached the potential buyer. The acquisition was officially frozen. The millions of dollars Monica had expected were gone, at least for now. Contracts with key vendors were pulled. The company that had once felt so solid began to wobble. Employees whispered anxiously, worried about their jobs and futures. Even Tessa, who had mocked me endlessly, began avoiding her mother. She no longer smiled in meetings or bragged about the upcoming sale. She stayed at her desk, quiet, isolated. Monica, desperate to regain control, tried to blame me publicly. In a meeting with mid-level managers, she raised her voice, saying I had caused confusion during the auditor's review. If Brielle had done her job properly, none of this would have happened, she snapped. I remained calm. I waited for my moment. Then I presented a detailed timeline to the board, showing that the document alterations, removing my father's name and rewriting ownership, had been done years before I even joined the company. Every invoice, every amendment, every suspicious approval was carefully marked and dated. The room went silent. Monica's arguments fell flat. The proof was undeniable, objective, and clearly independent of any actions I had taken. She could no longer point fingers. By the end of the day, the board made their decision. Monica was removed as CEO pending the investigation. Her office was sealed off, and her access to company systems was restricted. The company that had once been her kingdom was crumbling around her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Employees whispered about change, about hope, and about justice finally being served. For the first time, I felt a small measure of relief. Monica had lost her control, and for the first time I could see a path forward, not just for me, but for the company my father had helped build. The collapse had begun, and there was no turning back. The investigation moved quickly once the board removed Monica. Every document, every transaction, every altered signature was examined. The auditors and legal counsel confirmed what I had feared and hoped was true. My father, Daniel Carson, had been unlawfully removed from ownership. The revelation changed everything. As his daughter and sole heir, I was entitled to equity compensation. I would receive a formal ownership stake in the company my father had helped build. It wasn't just about money. It was about justice, about recognition, about setting things right. Settlement negotiations began immediately. Monica tried to resist, but with mounting evidence, her options were limited. Civil fraud charges were filed against her. The legal process was tense, filled with calls, documents, and careful review, but I wasn't alone. Gavin Mercer stayed by my side, guiding me through every step, explaining legal terms, and preparing me for meetings with the board and lawyers. His support made everything feel manageable. One quiet afternoon, I visited my father's grave. The flowers had faded slightly, and the sun was soft through the trees. I knelt and whispered, "Dad, I found the truth. I made sure your work, your investment, your life wasn't erased." I imagined him smiling, proud and relieved. That moment gave me a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. A few weeks later, the legal process concluded. I received formal documents confirming my ownership stake and financial compensation. The numbers were significant, but it was more than money, it was acknowledgement. My father's name was restored to the company's history, and his contribution could never be erased again. When the board offered me the full CEO role, I paused. It would have been a position of power, but I realized I didn't need it to honor my father or to make change. Instead, I declined the role. I kept my shares, my voice, and my influence quietly but effectively. I would ensure the company was run ethically, without stepping into the spotlight unnecessarily. For the first time since my father's death, I felt a sense of closure. Monica's lies and manipulation had been exposed. Justice had been served. And I had restored my father's legacy. I left the office that day with a quiet confidence. I wasn't just the niece who had been denied time off to grieve. I was his daughter, his heir, and the rightful owner of the company he had helped create. The reckoning was complete. After the investigation and settlements, the company began to restructure. Boards were reorganized, compliance protocols updated, and transparency became the new standard. I became the silent majority shareholder. I didn't need the CEO title, but my influence was secure, and I could guide the company in the right direction. Monica's reputation was ruined. Her wealth had dwindled as lawsuits and penalties took effect. Former allies distanced themselves, and she was no longer the figure of power she once appeared to be. Tessa, humiliated and isolated, quietly left town. No announcements, no dramatic goodbyes. Just gone. One of the first things I did was establish a scholarship in my father's name. Daniel Carson had worked so hard for others, and this was my way of honoring him. The scholarship supported young people from underprivileged backgrounds who wanted to study business or finance. I wanted them to have opportunities my father had fought for me to have. Next, I turned my attention to the company culture. Employees who had been mistreated, overworked, or overlooked were rehired or promoted. I implemented fair practices and transparent policies. I wanted Hale and Rowe Financial to become a place where people were valued, not just numbers on a spreadsheet. Months later, Monica returned, seeking forgiveness. She walked into the office, her voice quiet and tentative. "Brielle, I know I was wrong. Can you forgive me?" I looked at her calmly, without anger or sarcasm. I remembered the 4 days I had begged to grieve, the humiliation I had endured, and the years of injustice my father had suffered. "You denied me 4 days," I said. "I gave you consequences." Her face fell. She understood that nothing she could say would erase the truth or undo what had happened. I didn't need to add more. The consequences had already been served. I walked through the office one last time. Staff nodded, smiles of relief and respect following me. I passed familiar desks, quiet conference rooms, and long hallways. Every step felt heavy with meaning. When I finally stepped outside, I looked back at the building my father had helped build. I wasn't just someone's niece anymore. I was its rightful owner. I felt a quiet pride, a sense of closure, and the knowledge that justice had been done. For the first time, I could leave with my head high, knowing my father's legacy was restored, the company was safe, and I had taken back what was always ours. This story shows the importance of knowing your rights, documenting financial and legal matters, and standing up against injustice. Always review contracts carefully, keep personal records, and seek professional advice when needed. Share this story to inspire awareness, empowerment, and accountability in both family and workplace situations.